excited to have a great guest here, Charlie Villanueva. I'm going to give a little bit of intro for those that don't know Charlie. If they don't, I'd be very surprised. But we'll do a little bit of intro, kind of go over his background, and then we're going to open up some questions. So yeah, we're excited to have him here. So for those that don't know, today we have Charlie Villanueva on the podcast. NCAA national championship, former NBA forward. Charlie played at UConn. He helped them win the 2004 NCAA championship. He was selected number 7 overall in the 2005 NBA draft by the Raptors. Played 11 seasons in the league. Teams like the Raptors, the Bucks, the Pistons, and the Mavericks. And since retiring, opened up about tough times he had, whether that is with mental health during his playing days, dealing with injuries, and even navigating his financial journey. So Charlie, thank you for coming today. We're happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate that intro, Mike.
Yeah, listen, I'm a college hooper, man, but I'm like, man, it's very rarely do I have conversations with people that were better than me. So I tip my cap to that a little bit. But yeah, so the main goal of the conversation today is we just want to have real conversations about we want to have real conversations about the financial journey that athletes go through. We're trying to make it normal to talk about this stuff, right? Charlie, you've been in NBA locker rooms and college locker rooms. I've been in college locker rooms, right? Like, we talk about everything in those locker rooms, but unfortunately, money is one of the things we never talk about. And I feel passionate about the fact that financial health is where mental health was 10 years ago, right? You think about when you were playing ball, right? We didn't talk about mental health; it wasn't a thing, and now it's commonplace. I think right now, if we don't get in front of sort of this financial journey, especially at the college level, right? How do we help these players navigate it? Because we don't want to see something tragic happen. So that's where we are. So I'm going to kick it off with a couple of questions, if that works for you. So Charlie, the first question I have is, growing up in New York, what was your financial situation like, and how did you think about money growing up?
To be honest, I really didn't think about money as much. I mean, we come from Dominican backgrounds, Dominican immigrant parents who came to New York and trying to live the American dream, and so everything was a struggle. I mean, just to be transparent and straight up here, my parents grew up on welfare. I was on welfare for 18 years of my life. Maybe a little bit more than that, to be honest. But yeah, so we managed with the little that we had, and I never really thought about like money as a thing or like I was missing it because I never really had it. So it was one of those things where financial literacy was not a thing, was not a topic discussed in the household. Because we was just trying to worry about our next meal of the day. Those are different types of struggles there. So I definitely didn't come from a financial background and didn't know much about financial literacy at all. All that is, we grew up on welfare, and
So now let's fast forward, right? So kind of post growing up, you played 2 years at UConn, coming up on draft night, right? So all the money stuff is starting to hit you now. So think back to draft night. Were you thinking about that money and that opportunity as you walked across the stage?
that's a good question. I mean, like, to be honest, I wasn't thinking about money at all. I was just thinking about the kid that had a dream of being in the NBA one day and shaking David Stern's hands is actually living up his dream. To me, I never looked at the NBA as a business. And maybe we can get into that a little bit later on. But I just looked at the me accomplishing a goal. I never thought about the financial aspect of it. And I wasn't prepared for any of it, to be honest. Because again, like I said earlier, like I didn't grow up in a financial, where financial literacy was talked about. So I didn't know any better. So I wasn't really thinking about the money aspect. I mean, I wasn't oblivious to it. Like I knew it was coming,
Yeah.
but like I'm not thinking like, okay, well, I'm going to end up doing this, that. I was just the same dude at all times.
So what was that wake up call, right? You talk about you didn't really think about the NBA as a business, but what was that wake up call, and then were other people around you thinking about that money maybe before you were?
Yeah, I mean, the number one people that count your pockets before you get it is your family. It's the people closest to you. And then for me, I was, fortunate enough to get drafted at 20 years old, but I'm still developing. I'm still young minded. I still need, people to look up to. And at that point, I didn't have nobody to look up to because remember, I grew up in the inner city of New York and Queens, and you know, people are in, economically are in a certain level. You know what I'm saying? So nobody's teaching me about all this money I'm about to get. So now I become the first of everything. The first millionaire in the family. Now I got to figure it out. Who am I going to get education from? And yeah, it just never happened. So I was kind of just learning on the fly.
So walk me through maybe one or two of those tough conversations, right? Like you talk about, right? Like people were counting your pockets, right? How'd you navigate that as somebody who was young? You're looking up to everybody, and then all of a sudden, people you look up to are asking for a couple dollars, right? How did you have those conversations?
That was tough. It was tough because I wasn't prepared for that, right? I'm looking at myself as this dude that just went to the NBA, but yeah, I'm still the same kid mentally. While other people all of a sudden now looking at me as dollar sign. So it was tough because you lose family members, you lose friends, people that you thought were friends because it's like I got drafted, but it's more like, oh no, we all got drafted type of deal, and it shouldn't be that way. But it was tough. It was tough. I remember having a conversation with family members that where it was no, like they would ask me for X amount of dollars, and you have to learn how to say no. But I only learned how to say no because all the time I was saying yes. And anytime a family member or friend asks you for money, let me borrow, most of the time is let me get. You know what I'm saying? You're never seeing that money back. So once that happened a few times to me, I learned, so kind of like the experience, I kind of had to experience being let down. People say they're going to pay me back and they never do a few times, and then that after that, after a few situations, it was like, all right, I got to learn how to say no.
Were there guys, in the locker room or people in your life that, were doing things financially that you wanted to do and that were your mentors when you got to the league or even as you kind of grew old in the league?
So one thing I knew though when and I will give credit to the NBA on this is they normally have these rookie transition programs or whatnot when you go into the league, and one of the things that stood out to me is that they said, and it always stood in my head, was 80% of athletes normally go broke after 5 years. This is in the NBA after 5 years of retirement, and I've always said I want to be that 20%. I did a good job saving, all throughout my career in the NBA. But there was like the likes of the Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, a name a lot of people might not remember, but RIP just passed away, is Junior Bridgman, who was a guy that didn't make much in his NBA career, but after his NBA career, he's made, I think he was considered a billionaire. So looking at him as an entrepreneur, Magic Johnson, obviously, was an idol, at least for me, because of the entrepreneurship, business savvy that he has, and that's still one of my goals is to be like the likes of someone like him.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's go back to, you're drafted by the Raptors and you're heading to Toronto, right? Talk about your experience with taxes, right? Those Canadian taxes hit a little hard, right? So tell me about your tax experience. Listen, the young NL guys, they're going through it right now, right? When they're making money and the tax Uncle Sam is coming
Yeah.
for them. Like, what was your experience with that in Canada?
It's crazy because as a 20, I was 20, 21 years old, you're not really thinking about taxes because you never had to pay taxes,
Yeah.
right? So all I'm doing is counting on, and this is like the narrative needs to change, it needs to turn. Is as athletes, all we know is basketball, right? And then once we get to the opportunity where it becomes a business and we get money and we get paid for it, now it's like we got to depend on others. We got to depend on others to kind of show us the way, and that was kind of my case, and it shouldn't have been that way. They should have been teaching me as we're going along. But most of the times, you see that not to get too deep into it, but financial advisors and these professionals want to keep you in a certain box because the more they teach you or the more they educate you on certain things and how to do things, now you don't need them. So they kind of want to keep you in this box, and it shouldn't be that way. And that was one of those, kids that fell into victim of that, of depending on others, whether it's taxes, how to buy a mortgage. I mean, how to buy a property, mortgage leverage. How do I leverage my assets? Credit lines, how to use them. This, that, third. I mean, I could go on and on and on. But I didn't learn all of this. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, I didn't learn it like towards the end of my career. Like, so when I get drafted by Toronto, I'm not thinking about taxes. I'm not thinking about how to I can write off certain things by buying certain things. I don't know how to do an LLC. I don't. So I'm not asking these questions because I just lack of education. So now, like, fast forward later, now when it's time for me to go back to Toronto, and back in 2009, I had a chance to go to Toronto. Now I had a little bit of savviness to now, like, to consider that as a play. Like, I'm gonna be paying more taxes if I go to Canada.
Yeah.
So as I got older, I started getting a little bit more savvier on the financial side of things. But I was just a kid coming into the league, like, that lacked education on my finances.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like, we'll talk about Scout very briefly, but yeah, I think that's one piece you said, right? But most people that are making money off these players, they don't want you to understand how it works, right? Because if you know how it works, you know that I'm probably overpaying you for what you ain't doing.
Yep.
So that's the whole thing. Is like, if I keep you in the dark, you'll need me forever. So, we try to change that. Now let's think back to, like, kind of the world we are in now, right? So if you were making NIL money when you were in UConn, would that have changed the way that you came out, you played there for a couple years, you were the number 7 pick, that contract was like 2 mil at the time? Like, how would NIL have affected your thought process there?
It would have. I think it would have helped me talk about my finance a lot earlier stage, right? And I think this I can talk about this all day too. Where, in school they don't teach you these things. They don't teach you about how to open up an LLC and how to run a business and taxes and you know about real things that matter in life,
Yeah.
right? That you're gonna face at some point in your life as you get older. But yeah, man, I mean, it was one of those things where it was hard for me to really understand finances in the beginning, and then I was able to, as I got older, able to figure things out.
Yeah, I love it. And one thing as part of this episode, I'm excited to announce is that you're an investor now at Scout, so you're a part of the team. We're excited to have you. If you can share kind of what was one of the deciding factors, or some of the factors that wanted that helped kind of push you to be a part of what we're building here at Scout.
I just love everything about it. I love the education aspect of it. The part that teaching you about your taxes, teaching you about opportunity, how to run certain things, how to I'm super big on education and the financial literacy side, so it stands with everything of what I represent. Because it's like we don't know the opportunity that these athletes hope, whatever sport they're playing, hopefully they play 20, 30 years in that sport. But 99.9%, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare these kids for life after whatever sport while they're earning this money? Because we don't know, some of these kids, this might be the most money they ever see in their life. So how do we make this money grow? How do we make this money work for us? Because the goal is to eventually figure out how money works for you versus you working for money. We all, nothing wrong with us being an employee, but there's not a lot of growth in that. You're not going to save yourself to wealth. You have to invest. You have to learn how to make this money grow. So yeah, why not teach it at an early age in college? So yeah, so me being a part of it, it was a no brainer for me.
I love it. I love it. So, we're happy to have you say that, NIL has created a bunch of business owners, right? You're paid as a 1099. All of a sudden, you're a business owner. So let's leverage that opportunity to kind of change your life and your family's life, but do it the right way. So we got a couple rapid fire questions. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So give me a
Yeah.
one word answer, kind of whatever you think, and then yeah, we'll wrap it. So I think the first thing is, what did you spend your first check on?
But I spent it on a BMW 750 Li. Bad decision.
Where's that? What happened to that car? How long did you have that car for?
I probably had it for 2 or 3 years and got rid of it, man.
Okay. All right. Well, that's longer than most, right? So we give some credit there. Other than Scout, what's the best investment you've ever made?
And myself.
Okay.
Best investment I made is in myself because at the end of the day, I betted on myself and things worked out for me. You know, life after sports or life after basketball, I should say. You know, I was considered one of the lucky ones where I was able to figure it out.
I love it. I love it. What's the, sorry to turn it to a sour note, what's the worst purchase you made other than that car?
Other than that car, probably I made some bad real estate decisions, um, bad investments that cost me a lot, and but all you can do is you live, you learn, and you move on, and that's part of the game of being an investor. Is you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some, but the goal is to win more than you lose.
100%. 100%. What you say when that first NBA paycheck hit that account?
Damn, I'm out the hood.
I love it. I
I'm
love
out
it.
the hood, yeah, for sure.
I feel you on that. And then what's the best NBA city to play in?
Best NBA city. I mean, I'm a New Yorker, so I'm gonna say New York. But I love my second would be Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah, so between New York and Toronto are two of my favorite cities to play in for sure.
And last question, right? You're in college today. What's the dream NIL deal that you want to have? With what company?
I would have been besides Scout.
Yeah, other than us, right? Other than us, but yeah, somebody else.
For me is since now that I make a living investing in real estate, I will somehow integrate some type of real estate company, having some type of deal with that. I felt like I study wealthy individuals, and any wealthy individual has real estate in their portfolio one way or another. So to me, it's like this the best partnership to have is with a real estate company, at least for me, for sure.
I love it. So that's all we have today, Charlie. Thanks for taking the time, man. This is great. Appreciate it. And again, our goal is how do we, demystify this financial thing and give players the tools earlier to change all their lives, right? And that's the whole goal of this and the whole goal of this conversation. So thanks for coming. We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.